The Church and the Education of the Poor. Addressing educators, Pope Francis recalled that education has always been one of the highest expressions of Christian charity. Yours is a mission full of obstacles as well as joys, a mission of love, because you cannot teach without loving. In this sense, since ancient times, Christians have understood that knowledge liberates, gives dignity, and brings us closer to the truth. For the Church, teaching the poor was an act of justice and faith. Inspired by the example of the Master who taught people divine and human truths, she took on the mission of forming children and young people, especially the poorest, in truth and love. This mission took shape with the founding of congregations dedicated to education. In the 16th century, St. Joseph Calazans, struck by the lack of education and training among the poorer people of Rome, established Europe's first free public school in some rooms adjacent to the church of Santa Dorte in Trastevere. This was the seed from which the poor clerics of the Mother of God of the Pius schools, known as the Piarists, would later emerge and develop, though not without difficulty. Their goal was that of transmitting to young people not only secular knowledge, but also the wisdom of the gospel, teaching them to recognize, in their personal lives and in history, the loving action of God the Creator and Redeemer. In fact, we can consider this courageous priest as the true founder of the modern Catholic school, aimed at the integral formation of people and open to all. Inspired by the same sensitivity, St. John Baptiste de la Salle, realizing the injustice caused by the exclusion of the children of workers and ordinary people from the educational system of France at that time, founded the Brothers of the Christian Schools in the 17th century, with the ideal of offering them free education, solid formation, and a fraternal environment. De La Salle saw the classroom as a place for human development, but also for conversion. In his colleges, prayer, method, discipline, and sharing were combined. Each child was considered a unique gift from God, and the act of teaching was a service to the kingdom of God. In the 19th century, also in France, St. Marcellin Champagnat founded the Institute of the Marist Brothers of the Schools. He was sensitive to the spiritual and educational needs of his time, especially to religious ignorance and the situation of neglect experienced in a particular way by the young people and children, especially those most in need, during a period when access to education continued to be the privilege of a few. In the same spirit, St. John Bosco began the great work of the Salesians in Italy based on the three principles of the preventative method: reason, religion, and loving kindness. Blessed Antonio Rosimini founded the Institute of Charity, in which intellectual charity was placed alongside material charity, with spiritual pastoral charity at the top, as an indispensable dimension of any charitable action aimed at the good and integral development of the person. Many female congregations were protagonists of this pedagogical revolution. Founded in the 18th and 19th century, the Ursulines, the Sisters of the Company of Mary Our Lady, the Magistra, and many others, stepped into the spaces where the state was absent. They created schools in small villages, suburbs, and working-class neighborhoods. In particular, the education of girls became a priority. The religious sisters taught literacy, evangelized, took care of practical matters of daily life, elevated their spirits through the cultivation of the arts, and above all, formed consciences. Their pedagogy was simple: closeness, patience, and gentleness. They taught by the example of their lives before teaching with words. In times of widespread illiteracy and systematic exclusion, these consecrated women were beacons of hope. Their mission was to form hearts, teach people to think, and promote dignity. By combining a life of piety and dedication to others, they fought abandonment with the tenderness of those who educate in the name of Christ. For the Christian faith, the education of the poor is not a favor, but a duty. Children have a right to knowledge as a fundamental requirement for the recognition of human dignity. Teaching them affirms their value, giving them the tools to transform their reality. Christian tradition considers knowledge a gift from God and a community responsibility. Christian education does not only form professionals, but also people open to goodness, beauty, and truth. Catholic schools, therefore, when they are faithful to their name, are places of inclusion, integral formation, and human development. By combining faith and culture, they sow the seeds of the future, honor the image of God, and build a better society. Accompanying migrants. The experience of migration accompanies the history of the people of God. Abraham sets out without knowing where he is going. Moses leads the pilgrim people through the desert. Mary and Joseph flee with the child Jesus to Egypt. Christ himself, who came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him, lived among us as a stranger. For this reason, the Church has always recognized in migrants a living presence of the Lord, who on the day of judgment will say to those on his right, "I was a stranger, and you welcomed me." In the 19th century, when millions of Europeans immigrated in search of better living conditions, two great saints distinguished themselves in the pastoral care of migrants: St. John Baptiste Scalabrini and St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. Scalabrini, Bishop of Piacenza, founded the missionaries of St. Charles to accompany migrants to their destinations, offering them spiritual, legal, and material assistance. He saw migrants as recipients of a new evangelization, warning of the risks of exploitation and loss of faith in a foreign land. Responding generously to the charism that the Lord had given him, Scalabrini looked forward to a world and a church without barriers, where no one was a foreigner. St. Francis Cabrini, born in Italy and a naturalized American, was the first citizen of the United States to be canonized. To fulfill her mission of assisting migrants, she crossed the Atlantic several times. Armed with remarkable boldness, she started schools, hospitals, and orphanages from nothing for the masses of the poor who ventured into the New World in search of work. Not knowing the language and lacking the wherewithal to find a respectable place in American society, they were often victims of the unscrupulous. Her motherly heart, which allowed her no rest, reached out to them everywhere, in hovels, prisons, and mines. In the holy year of 1950, Pope Pius XII proclaimed her patroness of all migrants. The Church's tradition of working for and with migrants continues, and today this service is expressed in initiatives such as refugee reception centers, border missions, and the efforts of Caritas Internationalis and other institutions. Contemporary teaching clearly reaffirms this commitment. Pope Francis has recalled that the Church's mission to migrants and refugees is even broader, insisting that our response to the challenges posed by contemporary migration can be summed up in 4 verbs: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. Yet these verbs do not apply only to migrants and refugees. They describe the Church's mission to all those living in the existential peripheries, who need to be welcomed, protected, promoted, and integrated. He also said, every human being is a child of God. He or she bears the image of Christ. We ourselves need to see, and then to enable others to see, that migrants and refugees do not only represent a problem to be solved, but are brothers and sisters to be welcomed, respected, and loved. They are an occasion that Providence gives us to help build a more just society, a more perfect democracy, a more united country, a more fraternal world, and a more open and evangelical Christian community. The Church, like a mother, accompanies those who are walking. Where the world sees threats, she sees children. Where walls are built, she builds bridges. She knows that her proclamation of the gospel is credible only when it is translated into gestures of closeness and welcome. She knows that in every rejected migrant, it is Christ himself who knocks at the door of the community.